Who founded the company Nike? Why did the logo only cost $35? Why would a young businessman need a mentor? In this video, you'll learn the answers to all of these questions. Phil Knight and Bill Bowerman founded Nike in 1964. At the time, the entrepreneurs had no money and no support, and today Nike is one of the most profitable companies in the world. The company was originally called Blue Ribbon Sports. It all started in the mid-60s. Knight was a runner and Bowerman was a trainer. Who knew better than them the problems with athletic equipment? At the time there were no mid-priced professional shoes on the US market. All shoes were then divided into two types, expensive but high quality, such as Adidas, and everything else, cheap low quality. So the idea came to buy quality shoes in Asia at low cost, but of higher quality than the US market, bring and sell more expensive. Profits from sales in their opinion should be enough to open their own production. They are discounted by $500 for the purchase of shoes. Knight found a supplier in Japan. It was the manufacturer Onitsuka Tiger. The first name the company came up with by Knight on the fly. During negotiations with the Japanese, they asked Knight which company he represented. Knight wasn't confused, and the first thing he came up with was Blue Ribbon M Sports, which was similar to the Blue Ribbon beer he had been drinking at the airport just before the negotiations. The first batch were 300 pieces of sneakers that Knight kept from his parents and sold to local athletes and coaches right out of the trunk of his car. Amazingly quickly, Onitsuka Tiger sneakers made a splash on American running tracks. In the first year, the company's profit was $8,000 and went to expand the business. In 1964, when Knight and Bowerman decided they couldn't do it on their own anymore, they needed to expand. The company's first full-time employee, Knight's former college race rival Jeff Johnson, joins the company. He is a sales manager who drives his van to track and field events and sells Tiger sneakers to athletes. Along the way, he asks athletes what kind of shoes they would like to buy, gaining invaluable information for creating the company's market strategy. Jeff is also the author of the brand name. In 1965 he had a dream about the winged goddess of victory, Nika, after whom the partners decided to name their sneakers. The Nike logo gives the development of the girl to a designer who, after a huge number of unsuccessful options, finally proposes an option and it is approved. The designer received just over $30 for her work. 12 years later, though, Nike gave Davidson a diamond ring and an envelope with 500 shares of Nike stock as a thank you. Still in the business of selling Tiger, Knight and Bowerman, without informing anyone about their plans, created their own line of athletic shoes based on Japanese designs, later called Nike. Without informing their Japanese partners, they produced shoes under their own brand Nike without their consent. The sneakers were a completely identical version of Onitsuka Tiger, only the tiger stripes were replaced by the Nike logo. Sales begin to go uphill, and then there is a problem with the supplier. The betrayal of Blue Ribbon Sports was discovered, and a representative of Onitsuka Tiger arrived at the company's warehouse in Los Angeles and stumbled upon a pair of Nike hidden in the storeroom. The Japanese decide to buy back part of the brand, threatening to stop supplying. The case leads to a lawsuit, which ruled that Nike has the right to use the designs for only 6 months, and after that it must trade only its own shoes. In order to successfully produce and sell their own line of sneakers, Nike needed to create a model different from those that are on the market. Bowerman, looking for a way to improve the design of Japanese athletic shoes, and Knight, instead of bringing in someone else to do the work, decided to do the design himself. Bowerman turned his attention to his wife's waffle iron and used it to make a fluted sole. This sole would later become one of the main distinguishing features Nike, thanks to its good grip and high abrasion resistance. Since 1972, the entry into the big sport began. Sneakers began to be used by athletes in training camps before the Olympics. The company also enters the foreign market, starting with Canada. In 1974 the waffle sole becomes more popular. The first production factory opens in the United States. By 1977, factories opened in Taiwan and Korea. The brand begins to become recognizable and popular, and not to rest on its laurels is taken a number of decisions, begins aggressive advertising, which is to attract famous athletes. So a contract was signed with the famous tennis player John McEnroe. Fans of the sports stars would want to wear the same shoes to resemble their idols, a tactic that would later become commonplace. It was also necessary to develop new models of shoes before big sporting events, such as the Olympics, which the company never missed. Most athletes ran in Nike sneakers. They also received gold medals. Sneakers were always in sight, and finally sports was to become the new fashion. Was launched a line of sportswear and even a line of children's products. They started to enter the European market, where Adidas and Puma had already taken a strong position. The principle of promotion remained the same, attracting stars. For advertising purposes, Nike began to take an interest in other sports, and in 1985 the company decided to take over basketball, concluding an advertising contract with the then novice basketball player Michael Jordan. So was born the first line of Air Jordan, which included shoes and sportswear. It caused a sensation. According to the contract, the athlete must always perform in branded sneakers in black and red, and according to the rules of basketball, all players had to wear white shoes. Nike paid hefty fines for Jordan so long as he always wore the sneakers in plain sight. All these scandals talk only attracted even more customers, so production of the model continued, producing the second and then the third series. The direction was also changed. Several women's lines were added. In 1987, a new model Air Max was released, which had a transparent window on the sole. This was the first application of air cushion technology in the sole, proposed 8 years earlier by a NASA employee. Through a transparent window you could see the cushioning lining. This model immediately became a hit of sales. Then several more models were created, for running and training. The first model with a stable lightweight design. And as expected, fashion for sports and fitness began to gain momentum, and Nike was shooting ads with the famous slogan, "Just Do It," where many famous athletes showed different collections of the brand. By the 90s, thanks to high-quality products and well-thought-out advertising, Nike is already becoming a leader in the sale of sportswear and footwear. In 1997 the company received a record revenue of almost $9.5 billion. A large part of which was of course American market. Whereas Asia and Europe together brought in approximately $2 billion. The company also actively promoted healthy lifestyles and sports among American youth by coming up with various promotions, and some were created for aspiring athletes, motivating them to achieve their goals in healthy competition. In the late 90s, Nike began to take the internet by shooting a variety of viral videos which would later become the hallmark of the company. Internet sales started along with it. In 2001 begins to produce its products not only for professional athletes, but also for all people, saying that the athlete is absolutely any person. The brand itself is a source of inspiration. Also in the 2000s, a video was filmed, which would become one of the best in the history of the company. 20 of the best players in the world caged playing a soccer tournament. Subsequently, Nike will surprise the world many more times with their innovations in the design of clothing and footwear, the desire to create something worthwhile, to change the world for the better and build a profitable business, led an ordinary American student Phil Knight to such incredible success. He not only created the world-famous brand, but in the 90s he was awarded the status of the most influential person in the sport, which for the first time was given to a man who is not an athlete or a sports club owner. I hope you enjoyed the history of the brand Nike. Friends, it's probably a good time to ask you the question, Nike or Adidas? Share your opinion in the comments, it is very interesting to know your opinion. Do you want to know more interesting stories about famous brand? Like and subscribe the channel. I'm not saying goodbye to you, I'm saying, until new stories.